No, her. No, get her too.
Me?
Hey, look at her. You know, you gotta film her. No, plus.
Uncle Willie,
No,
I
plus.
love you.
No, but plus she get the big heart for help me.
No.
Yeah. See? See the no.
I was interested in what you were saying because you were saying about the
That's
siren.
she get
and
two.
so, like, they didn't flare the
We're all
siren.
for the Hawaiian
Okay.
people.
So
you know?
yeah. So they had enough chance to flare the siren. So the first thing that happened basically was early Tuesday morning. The electricity went off around 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Okay, the electricity shut off, and then a little bit of winds came around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Then a little fire came up at our school. They put that out. The firemen put everything out, and then we got a clearance that all the fires were put out. The wind
Did you get that clearance?
from the news. It came on the news. Yeah.
The news was still.
The news was still going.
Electricity.
They had cell phone, whatever was going on, and there was no electricity. But they said that there was clearance that was going on social media, or communities in there, and so everybody starts talking, and then the wind picked up. So around 2 o'clock, so it was around 2 o'clock, the wind started to get stronger. So that's when it picked up, and then everybody here started seeing smoke here, right down there. There was a little bit of smoke here that was coming from the Kahoma area. And at that time, at around 2 to 3 o'clock, the wind picked up to about 65 to 70 miles per hour down there, not up here. It was down there. And that's when the big black smoke happened around that time, about 3:30ish, 4 o'clock. 3:30 is when the big black smoke was like this big black bomb that went off. It was right there. Yo, yeah, you could see it crackling. You could hear the crackling that was there in that area. Nothing was here yet. Everything was focused in that area, which is Kahoma area. Okay, and so at that time there was no siren. No siren went off in the morning.
Why do you think no siren went off? Do you think it was because of they didn't want people running up country like to the fire?
Yeah, so this is so my opinion and my strong belief of why the siren didn't go off is because they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared for a panic attack. They weren't prepared for the people in the community and the tourists, the visitors. They weren't prepared for an evacuation plan. We don't have an evacuation plan.
I know.
They need to be investigated. Our county needs to be investigated from zero to hero, all the way on A to Z on what is our evacuation plan for west side of Maui. They may have an evacuation plan for Wailuku, for Ka'alui, or upcountry, but what is our evacuation plan? We only have one way into Lahaina and one way out, number one. That is scary, right? So we do have a back road called Kahakaloa, but that back there, it's very dangerous. You have just one little road for about a mile. That's just one way. So if people are racing in and out, you're gonna have an accident. In addition to that, with this tiny little one-way road, there's no shoulder
To pull up on.
yeah, and there's no protection. If you take the wrong little inch of a turn, you're going over like 500 feet down into the ocean. Yeah, so if you've been there, you need to go there to see that, right? So they had all the time. Now, while that smoke was still there between 2:30 to 3:30, it didn't travel into the center of where the devastation is in the middle of Lahaina right now. They had a whole hour. While that bomb of an area was going off, they had a whole hour to put the alarm system on, and they still didn't do it. And then it started to travel and trickle into the lower Lahaina subdivision.
They were fighting those fires.
They all left. So the firemen left.
Because
They
were
left.
up country.
They were up country because there are other fires in up country area, but there were still a few firefighters here, just a few. A majority of them left to put out other fires because they said that it was done with already. By the time that they tried to get back in, the guys were just, it was just too much for them that they couldn't. The firefighters.
Did they come over the pass? Or how did the firemen? They hiked over? Or how
No,
did-
they drove. They drove from the one way in and one way out.
So that wasn't blocked. So they were
No,
still able.
it
to
wasn't blocked. Oh, that place was open. Yeah, that was open. It was open for people to, like yourselves, visitors could still come in.
Okay.
The sad part about it is that while all of this was going on, the fire started, and then it started to trickle this way. People on the other side, like my auntie, them, just all the local people in Kahalui, Wailuku, Kula, on the radio, nothing was broadcasted that there was a fire
To evacuate.
Nothing was on the radio, not even on the radio. They didn't know about the fire until I went on social media. I went on Facebook because my son was caught up in the middle of the fire. He got caught in the middle of that black smoke, and I started panicking and going on Facebook and Instagram asking for help. My son is like having an anxiety attack. He thinks he's gonna die.
He still had a signal to call you.
He had a signal, a little bit signal. It was kind of rough, but he had enough signal to hear my voice and for me to guide him out of the flames. And the police officers are very good men, don't get me wrong, but they have no experience in the evacuation plan. They have no experience, and they guided our people into the fire.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
And I'm not blaming them because it falls back onto our mayor and the county of Maui because they did not train our staffing, our state men, the right way. So they basically went into the fire, and people were on Front Street, and families didn't have time to leave because they didn't get an alert. Kids didn't go to school because there was no electricity. Parents were working. Kids were playing in the streets while this was all happening.
I heard some neighborhoods got an evacuation warning. Did you guys, like, people were going through with bullhorns saying evacuate, evacuate?
That evacuation warning was from the police officers that was coming around the cul-de-sac areas in their cars on top of their microphones to say that you have to evacuate your home, fire, but they're doing it up here. They couldn't do it down there.
They could not do it.
It was too late already.
What time was it when they came?
The farthest they got to do it down on Lahaina Luna Road was where Hale Maho'olu Keawe Street. It's called Keawe Street. They went as far in as to where Hale Maho'olu is, which is an old folks elderly home.
Yes.
And they got to announce it on that thing, but not even that assisted those people in there.
Because they can't get out.
They can't get out. They didn't have enough time to get out. My uncle that barely made it out heard it, but he was sleeping. He smelt something, so he got up with whatever clothes he had on, and he had nobody to take him. He hid behind a chair. 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
About 4 to 4:30. He came out running with his slippers, and he saw the embers, he told me, and he hid behind a car while the smoke was just gusting and the wind was just blowing around him. The heat was getting hotter, he told me. And then he just stood up to look, because he said if this is his last, if this was it for him, he's going to try one last time. When he stood up, there was a truck passing him. And he jumped in, he went out to the truck, and the truck let him into the truck and took him up this way.
He didn't know them.
He didn't know them.
No, they just.
Yeah, he didn't know them. And he jumped in, they picked him up, and they went up this way, which is instead of going to the flame, they already knew bypass route. They turned to come up Mayoga.
Yeah.
And they went down the bypass, which is, like I said, people didn't have an evacuation plan, but he made it to his daughter's house. He needs help. I know that he needs to probably see one of you. He's just in shock right now from it, because I can hear it in his chest. I can hear it in his voice every time I talk to him.
He's got the soot.
Yes, it's in there. It's in there, and he just got through a major. Like all of the elderly people there are there for a reason, right? So he knows like the people that couldn't make it out because they were his neighbors, and they were just telling him to go because he wanted to help them. But like I said, some of them need assistance walking on a cane or in a wheelchair, and those people didn't have enough time to make it.
Did anybody down there, they tried to access their hoses and they weren't, like, there was no water? Is that true? Is that like...
Their water didn't shut off until like, the water didn't run out, I gotta say, to probably around maybe between 6 and 7. There is one of our friends who's all over social media and Instagram right now that he was trying to put out the water at everybody's house down by the mill. That's called the mill yard area where the housing is.
Yeah.
And he was running around helping put out fires in people's homes until it was just too much for him. The wind got so strong that he left, but the water also ran out at that time. The water ran out at one point.
I heard they were fighting it for 45 minutes and the water
Correct.
went out, and then they had to get water from Kehea Beach.
Correct. So they ran out of water, and I can't answer you why we ran out of water. I don't know the statistics of all of that stuff, but that is definitely possibly a cause of the fires not being put out in a timely fashion. But you're going against 80 miles per hour winds, so that's not my experience. Except just if the siren, this is all about the evacuation notification for our community. It's not just Lahaina. It should have gone off for people on the outside too.
To be able to text you,
To be able
say,
to-
hey,
yes.
this is what's happening. There
Yes.
needs to be redundancy in the system, so that
Yes.
if like the cell phone towers go down, a satellite comes in and checks
Yep.
in and
Yes.
sends out the backup systems of notifications to residents.
None of that happened. None of that happened. And I'm not saying that that could have been a lifesaver for everybody, but it definitely would have saved a lot of lives. Just that siren.
And if the power was out, but a lot of the power poles got knocked down,
Yes.
and then they were still live, so the power must not have been like shut off fully on some of these transformers.
And exactly, so my son, while he was going through the fire and while he was trying to escape on Honoapi'ilani Highway, where Safeway is at, there was poles that the wires were flying around like this, and it landed on his car and other people's car on the road while they're trying to leave Lahaina and get out. So there were live wires and they were sparking like all over.
Which, if the power was out, those
It-
technically should have
correct.
been.
If the
like,
power was completely
cut,
out,
yeah.
then you would. That's a very good point. When they're saying this in all these press releases that the power was completely out, the cellular service was completely out. You know, they said that because there was no power and there was no cellular service that they couldn't put the siren on. That is the first thing that they said on day 5 when they arrived here. And then yesterday is day 9, and then they're saying that it worked.
So it
But it was
contradicts itself.
yes,
Right, yeah.
it was a decision that the head director of management, disaster management, made. Mr. Herman Adaya made this decision to not. He said he doesn't regret not putting on the siren, because if he did do it, then the people would head up here to where we're at into the fire. But the fire, they would have known that you're making a prejudgment decision on people's common sense, and that's not a decision that you have the right to make. To save, you're supposed to let people make the decision for themselves to fight for their own life, and not you make that
Because they
decision.
could see that there's not a tsunami coming, right?
course.
They could see that, like,
Of course.
fire when you
Yes.
walk outside the door. Because a
Yes.
lot of people I heard were sleeping because
They were
school was
sleeping.
out.
Yes.
And so people just were taking
There was
naps
no,
during the middle of the day.
yeah, little areas in Lahaina didn't have electricity, not all areas.
Yeah. Front
So the
Street had no
areas, yes,
electricity.
no electricity. My restaurant, no electricity, so that's why we didn't open. So we
Which
were
one's your
right there.
restaurant?
808 Grinds Cafe.
Grinds
Yeah.
is yours? Oh.
Yeah, that's my baby. I've had it for 10 years. But yes, so she disintegrated with everybody else out there. But you know, when we focus back on the siren and on electricity and on the reasons why things weren't done, the people in this community that are still here and those that are still fighting to find their loved ones deserve the truth. That's it. That's what it's about. We deserve an apology and we deserve a truth. And then people can heal. If you continuously just go one lie after another and another, and you continuously blame another entity like Hawaiian Electric and then another entity, and not accept responsibility for your lack of responsibility to educate your employees on how to properly have an evacuation plan, you need to apologize. You need to accept responsibility for that. It is not Hawaiian Electric's fault fully. There may be a part of that is because it's the pole that sparked the fire, but you had a job to do for your people. You're supposed to investigate them because we had 2 fires here in the past 3.5 years. We had 2 fires here. You had enough time to plan an evacuation plan. You had enough time to test your sirens. You had enough time to educate your community of people here all over this island that this siren means this siren means this, but you didn't. What did you do during this past 3 years that we went through 2 fires? You didn't do nothing. You just went on with your normal day-to-day job and worried about development and other things,
Instead of
but
mitigation and preparedness.
not preparing your community, the people that voted for you, the people that supported you, and the people that probably still support you, and have some faith that you're gonna do what's right, and apologize and give us the truth. We just want to know why it wasn't,
And it's better just to have an apology, like, right? And
so
not,
we can have peace
yeah, instead of
in our
blame
heart.
and blame and blame.
because it's not fair to those that are still waiting for their family, or those that actually found their family and got the call from you folks, or got the call from FEMA, whoever it may be, that they located their loved ones. And then now they can actually, possibly move on knowing that they found their loved ones, but yet they want answers. They want to know why. We want to know why as a community, because we could have done more. There's people that were up here that possibly could have been down there helping the kupunas, helping people that was right below our street, because the fires weren't there had that alarm gone off. You know what I mean? We are a strong, tight community here. We're not one for one. We're one for all. And that's one thing about Hawaii and our people, is our spirit of aloha goes beyond what everybody thinks when you see on commercials. Paradise, beaches, hula, coconut shells, luau's. It's different. It's our hearts and what makes us one, and the passion that we have and respect we have for each other. And we only want to be unified and treated as one and normal. We don't want to be lied and taken advantage of, especially when something like this had happened. This is like they said on the news, this is the worst devastation of all firefighters ever. And we're on a small little island of how many people?
And did they tell you where Coast Guard was, to put out water in that direction? There's no word on that.
We had no word of that. No. We didn't know where Coast Guard was. This is all during that day of the storm. So there was no Coast Guard. If the Coast Guards were on land, we didn't see them. The Coast Guards may have been in the ocean. They have to have been in the ocean, because when everybody was jumping into the ocean, they were swimming out to the boat.
So they were going to the Coast Guard boat?
Yeah, but that was all timing. So if those people were in the ocean at that timing that the Coast Guards were there, their lives were saved. But then you had the rest of the community that was running down the street and trying to get away from the fire, that jumped into the ocean, and it was super hot. They burnt, of course. And it's those people that came at that specific time that didn't make it to the Coast Guard boats. Did it come back again? I don't know. But we know that they were there for the first load of people that were saved. The next people, as you see all over the news, it'll speak for itself. People are going viral with families utilizing the break wall as a protection.
Yeah, they were going in to warm up and then come back out.
Yeah, because they knew that the water was just too hot for them to stay in. It was already at that point about 7:00 p.m. where nobody could go in the water. It was just, you could see the steam coming out, my friend said. The girl with all the 6 kids that was using the wall as protection from the fire. They made it out. Thank you, Jesus, But just that alone wouldn't have happened if there was some type of warning. And it's always going to go back for me and for my community of why was there no warning, and why did our own governor, lie to us and tell us on day one when he did his first press release that we didn't have electric and we didn't have cellular service. That's why the sirens didn't work. That is what was told to us. It's all over YouTube, so there's evidence of his press release. And then yesterday, his press release coverage, 2 days ago, they blamed Maui Electric. That was another press release. And then yesterday's press release was about them saying that the sirens did work, but it was a decision made by the director of emergency planning or evacuation, that he decided not to put on the siren because he was afraid that everybody would think it's a tsunami and they would run to higher ground. And I can't speak for what others feel, but for me, it's all common sense, right? Absolutely. Like, we would definitely not run to upper ground if we see a big ball of fire. And it's not just fire, it was a big black ball, like chemicals, radio, we don't know what was in there, but it was like cars and gasoline and propane tanks. You can tell that it was just not a normal fire. It was contained with just different chemicals, and it wasn't beautiful to look at at all. It's not something that we want to ever see and remember.
Did you talk about the children?
So, yes.
Did
So
you
the
tell them that when we were out there, none of us knew anything that was going on in Lahaina?
yes.
Yeah.
There was nothing on the radio. So while all of this was going on, even while the fire was still in one area, and then the fire went out to right here in my neighborhood, below the bypass, they still wasn't letting the outside world know on our local radio stations what was happening in our little community of 96761, which is our zip code. That's not normal. Because when things are happening out there in Kula and Kehea, and they're having a fire, we hear it in here. Every time there's something going on, prior to this devastated day of August 8th, we always hear it on the radio. We hear it on KPOA. It's the station we go to, or 99.9. We hear it all the time. Like anything, a plane crashes, a plane is on fire, just anything. A
Why
fire.
do you think that is that you didn't get any notifications?
Well, I strongly believe the reason why that we didn't get a notification is because they didn't want to panic. They didn't want our community of not just Lahaina to panic. We don't just Lahaina is just not Lahaina. We have Honokawai, we have Kahana, we have Kapalua. We go on for like about 5 miles, north of Lahaina, and we had visitors here.
Yeah.
Our economy is dependent upon the tourism industry. Was that part of their thoughts? Possibly. Like, okay, now we got a full island. The island is super full, 100% full, and we have our local community here. If we sounded alarm, where's everybody gonna go?
But they got buses into Sheraton and those hotels to get people out.
After the fact.
After the fact.
After the fact.
What time was that at that
Oh.
they did that?
That was after the fact. That was yeah. Love you. I see you when you come back. Your house be here.
So that was after the fact.
Well, that was after the fact. That wasn't even during the fire.
was
That
not.
was not during the fire at
So
all.
the fire was out. When
The
that
fire was out. So people that left and was evacuated, when they had the chaosity the very next day of everybody, all the guests that wanted to fly home, or they were sending them to Honolulu, to the convention center, wherever they were sending all these people. That was the day after. They bought a bus in here, or 2 days after they bought a bus, if they didn't have a car, to take them out. And these visitors have also horrific pictures and stories, because they have families and they have kids, and they were wondering why there was no alarm, no emergency system was broadcasted, because some of them had cellular service, some of them had electric down in that area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why wasn't it?
They didn't want congestion on that one road in and one road out, and maybe
They didn't want to panic. We are not ready. We were not educated. Their own crew and staff of our Maui Police Department is not experienced in an evacuation plan for the west side of Lahaina. And that's just that's my opinion. It may be just an opinion, and it's my strong belief
No, I agree-
that
I
that
agree with
is
you.
absolutely the reason why they didn't sound it. Because like I said, they had a lot of time. We got the first warning at early in the morning when the electricity went on about 4 a.m. that morning. And then a little fire up at Lahaina Luna School up here that they contained.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was no warning at that point, because they assumed, okay, fire's contained, but then the winds picked up. They were watching Dora. They got the weather specialists, whatever you call them, geologists, people in their office. They're communicating in their little network. Our governor, our mayor, the emergency evacuation, the head of chief of police, they are communicating. They knew what the winds were out here. They had to have known, and they had at that time that the first gust of 65 miles per hour of wind went out, knowing that we didn't have any electric, was their opportunity to shine, and they didn't shine. They did not do their people right. They did not protect the children of 96761 and their families. They took it upon themselves to make a selfish decision to think that our people in our community don't have the common sense to look at a fire and be like, no, we can't go up there. We gotta go south. We gotta go to Kahului. They made a judgment call on their own because they didn't want a panic attack of people running one way, two way, whatever way it was. But it happened anyway. But in the wakes of it happening anyway, we lost lives. we wouldn't have lost this much lives had it been done. That's the only acknowledgement that I believe that our community wants. We just want to be given the true reason why you didn't do it. Stop blaming Maui Electric, stop blaming the electric, stop blaming No Cellular Network. We already know that they're under investigation. It's already out that it was working, that your head director, Mr. Andaya, did not pull that siren. He did it because of his own beliefs. And there was no, for me, where's that protocol? Where was his protocol of, from his upper boss, which is the mayor, right, who checks him? Where was his protocol on how does he come to that decision of not pulling out the siren, making the siren work? So I think that's where a lot of it's going to come. Right now, people are healing in our community. Right now, people are grieving in our community. Right now, we still have lost lives in our community. People are not going to be focused on who do we blame. But there are community members that care about those families that are still down there. There are people that can speak in voice like myself, and I will never stop voicing. I don't care who shuts me down, who tries to ridicule my business, who tries to ridicule me as an individual. I will never let them crumble me. I will always stand for truth and facts, because that is what is going to take us, that is what's going to allow us to be heard, and that's what's going to bring justice to all of our people. And people here in Lahaina, actually, not Lahaina, I think all of Hawaii, everyone that has donated to our community to keep us alive, and this is what people need to understand, is that when this happened, day one, no electric, right? Because you can imagine, we did have our icebox, we did have food, we possibly had water. Day one, nobody was coming in, nobody. But because so much was going on, everybody was just trying to support everybody and look for their families, and everybody was in shock on day one. Day two comes around, we're like, wait, okay, we're gonna get help. We're gonna get food. We're gonna get water. We're gonna get gas. Nothing. We had to put things out on Instagram, put things out on social media, and then the communities from outside, businesses, local families, they took it upon themselves, their own private money, to help us and come in here and bring water and food to the people.
Was it because the media wasn't allowed in, or why do you think people didn't know?
They didn't know. The world didn't know what had happened to Maui. Nobody knew what happened to Maui. Nobody knew, because people on Maui didn't even know what was happening in Lahaina until my family didn't know what happened to my son until I went on social media. And I went on Instagram, I went on Facebook crying for help, for somebody to help my son. Please, I lost connection. And then they started asking each other what's going on in Lahaina. And then they call, you know how it works, Coconut Wireless. They start making calls. Like, then her daughter told her that there was a fire in Lahaina, and then that's how they knew. So it's like, there was nothing on the news. There was nothing. There was nothing on CNN, CBS, because nobody knew what the hell was going on. The only way the news reporters got whiff of what was going on is when the people of Lahaina that was in the fire, that experienced the fire, that was at the heat of a 200+ degree fire, were shooting live videos on Instagram and on Facebook. And they were putting that all over. And then the questions started to come in. This was day 2. And then day 3, it just started to flood. And then here comes the governor making his announcement about, blah, this, that, Lahaina the town is devastated, I'm headed out there, I'm on vacation he was on vacation, and he was gonna cut his vacation short, to come to Maui to help our people. So he showed up on day 5. No, he showed up on day 4. I'm gonna be nice. He showed up on day 4, but I think it's 5. But I'll say he showed up on day 4 with the mayor. The mayor never came in. He never came in. Now, mind you, we do have a lot of influential people in Lahaina, like Uncle Archie Kalepa. We have very influential leaders in this community, and that our mayor could have connected with, to check on, like, how you doing, brother? What's going on?
And he did.
He didn't. There was no communication at all. We were alone. We were alone in here, and a lot of people are still in shock and amazed that didn't happen. But that's just a small part of the issue. I think because they never realized, as a state, they didn't realize how far it could get out of control the way that it did. Nobody was ready for this devastation. Losing 10 house, one thing. Losing thousands, that's another story. Now you're talking about going global news.
And your business, which
My business took a toll, you know, alongside with my neighbors. My business has been there for 11 years.
808 Grinds.
808 Grinds Cafe. Yes, that is the tanker entrance there is Fulan and Nagasako. That's another family you all should see is the Nagasako store. We're going like 150 years in business that they've been in, you know, and so a lot, like I said, a lot of people lost a lot. They didn't only lose their business, they lost their homes,
Yeah.
they lost family members, and they're all still grieving.
Did they tell you anything? Like, did they give support for business owners yet?
No.
Did they told you anything about what
No.
potentially?
No, there's a lot of fundraisers that began. So on day 2 of when this all happened, this sister called Ilima, her name is Illuminator. She's a fighter, boxer from Honolulu. She started a Maui Fire fundraiser for the local people.
Okay.
And one day, in like 5 hours, she raised like $1 billion.
Wow.
Like it was so fast.
So people can get it to the right.
Yeah, and she can get it to the right people. So we're looking, and when that happened, you know, everybody around the world always sends their funds to Red Cross, FEMA, you know, and they don't know any better because Red Cross does really good
Are you
advertising.
doing a fundraiser? Like,
Oh yes,
Can we
yes.
can we have that link?
Oh yes. So 808 Grinds Cafe, on the day that this all started, I went ahead and started a GoFundMe, which is utilized 100%. 808 Grinds. It's called 808 Grinds Cafe.
On
GoFundMe. Correct. And all of the proceeds that we make, it is not to rebuild our business. It is to rebuild our community and help out first and foremost those families that lost everything.
And
Lost
we
everything.
know that 12 firefighters also lost all their homes.
Firefighters, first responders, police officers, they are just as important as anybody else because they fought to the end till they could, but they all had families that they had to get home to and save, and that's the most heart-wrenching. And I know that they possibly feel the same way as me, but I don't speak for them. But when they know that sirens didn't go off, I know they share that same concern. Why didn't the sirens go off? They want answers, you know, they want answers of why didn't it go on. So, you know, there's a lot of funds, like I said, that was started for us, but did our government do anything for us? And to probably day 4, that's when Red Cross got into the picture, and these nonprofit organizations that's built around our state, Hawaii Food Bank, and a lot of different organizations that are nonprofit started to do all these fundraisers. But you know what? It never fed us. The ones that went to those large fundraising, donation, charity, whatever you want to call it, never came in here, never fed us. The people that fed, clothed, sheltered, gave us all the necessities that we needed 24/7 came from our community. Our local businesses on the other side, correct. And we had people coming in from Waianae on Honolulu with their boats from the Big Island, from Molokai, right? And Molokai, mind you, is a little island. Their food is reserved there, their water.
Yeah.
They took whatever they had from their tiny little island and they sailed it back to this Kahana ramp place where all of that things were unloaded with a bunch of our local community people. We survived, we made it, we lived with our community. The people that gets the credit for us surviving and being fed and clothed is our community of people. Please don't get it wrong out there, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want anybody to think that Red Cross and FEMA and all these huge nonprofit organizations like Hawaii Food Bank, they're the ones that was feeding us for the first 4 to 5 days. No, they weren't. It was all local support. And now we are on day number 9 right now. We're going to day number 8 or 9. And we just got yesterday our 5 containers from one of those containers was from my friends that own restaurants in Honolulu. They sent a 40-foot container filled with pillows and blankets and food and water and all the necessities, toilet tissues, everything that they feel that a family needs. And it got confiscated by FEMA.
Where was that?
At our Young Brothers Harbor, Kaului Harbor.
Okay.
It's confiscated there. We don't know where it's at, but it is in their hands.
Can you give me the information and
Yes.
then I can try to see if I can get that out?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
sure.
Family members.
Yeah. So, you know, that's just one container.
Yep.
And probably another container was a lot of medicine, you know, and just things that our elderly may need, and kupunas. Another one was for the children. Children need teddy bears. Like, there's this one organization that I connected with in the mainland in California that connected with somebody in Honolulu, you know, because I'm always on social media. I'm just a huge social media person. And there's this teddy bear thing, nonprofit organization that they sent 1,000 teddy bears for the kids. And it's in one of those Matson containers that's confiscated by FEMA. What good is it to them? Our kids are out here suffering mentally, internally, and in pain, and they need something.
Have they set up any therapists for the children from Kamehameha yet, or what's happening?
They have at the different hubs. There's tents with medical and mental support.
Stearns has some
Yes.
mental therapists.
Yes, so
as
that's
well.
good to have.
Hawaii,
That is definitely good to have. But you know, in all honesty, we have a lot of aloha as local people, but we're also hila, which is a little shy. It's just a little shy. So I don't think you're gonna get a lot of us sitting at some open table, sitting there crying our hearts out. You're gonna reach us in a comfortable place with privacy. You won't get. I mean, I'm happy that it's there. It's good for many other people that needs that, right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
it's not. It's
Culturally not.
culturally, as a culture, we're very private, you know, and this is a painful time. People want to keep their sorrow and their hurt and their pain around just the people they love and need.
But it is helpful
But
to
it's
talk
very
about.
yeah.
It is definitely.
So my